So welcome to the suburb of Crayford, just outside of Adelaide. It's one of the highest points around the city of Adelaide. Mount Lofty, which is the tallest hill in the Mount Lofty ranges, is just over there, so it's a good place to start a hike. And I'm really not feeling like hiking. I've been feeling less and less like hiking with each one of these things I've been doing. But if I go from here on the Hyson Trail to this place called Cape Jervis, which is the end of the Hyson Trail, then walk back to the nearest large town, Victor Harbor, I'm going to add about 300 kilometers, so I'm going to get down to only about 300 k's left. So that's my goal. I'm not really feeling that hyped about this one, but I've got to do it. Here's something interesting for you Americans. Have a look at the price of the quick oats. That's $1.80 per 100 grams in Australian dollars. And here is the price of the cheapest granola, $1.20. Granola here is cheaper than oats. I'm walking more or less the same route I took on the first day of the big hike to Mount Barker and Clare. So I'm not really seeing anything new right now. I won't really be seeing anything new for the entire trip because I've already walked from here to Cape Jervis before. I'm just trying to tick off some boxes, do a route which I can actually do in this season. So here we have what might just be the only swamp on the entire Hyson Trail. It's behind this farm dam, and what might also be the most important boardwalk on the entire Hyson Trail, one of the longest as well. I camped at this spot a couple weeks ago, but now instead of heading out into the desert, into Murray Bridge, I'm heading directly south down the Fleurieu Peninsula to the end of the Hyson Trail. I think this is it for the night. I'm stealth camping, so I figured what better way to hide a tent than pitch it directly on the Hyson Trail. No one ever goes this way. No one ever does this thing. I might as well. Welcome to Kaipo Forest. It's part native vegetation like this and part pine forest. And I think I'll be walking through it for most of the day. The reason why I decided to do this section at this time of year is because it's much more bearable than the Lavender Trail is in October. The tree shade accounts for a lot. This is one of my favorite bits of this part of the Hyson Trail. It's just so kind of funny walking through this strange crowded forest. You don't really see that many forests like this in Australia, definitely with eucalyptus trees. The forest is mostly flat, but there are some views like that one right there. That mountain is Mount Lofty, the one I started at the base of yesterday. It's kind of crazy just how much of the Hyson Trail has changed in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, I was walking on that road. This trail didn't exist, but now it does. This bus shelter is new. There's no buses around here, so I'm pretty sure it's meant for hikers. Here's the end of that road walk. I complain about it being one of the longest on this hike. I cannot really complain too much because I've done 70-kilometer road walks on the Florida Trail and even longer ones in the States and Canada. So it's actually not that bad with road walks, the Hyson Trail. There are a lot of road walks, but the Hyson Trail keeps all of them pretty short. Shockingly, and I didn't at all expect this, I met some thru hikers. Well, not really thru hikers, they were only doing 11 days from Adelaide to Cape Jervis, but I met them anyway, which was pretty surprising. I really didn't think I'd see any other hikers on this part of the Hyson Trail. Welcome to the Fleurieu Peninsula. I can almost see the sea from here. I have enough energy to keep on moving today. That being said, I also have enough time in general to camp here and enjoy the sunset, so that's what I think I'll do. I honestly forgot just how little of the Hyson Trail is on private land. On the Lavender Federation Trail, it was about half private land, but with this, I think I went through about 2 sections of private land, 2 small sections, in all of the last 60, 70 kilometers. It just struck me that the Fleurieu Peninsula is actually a lot like Gaspésie. They're both peninsulas, they're both named by French explorers, and they both also have the same mix of plantation forest and natural forest and farmland and small towns beside the coast. So it is pretty similar. That was the longest busy paved road walk on the Heisen Trail. Lasted all of about 500 meters. This is a really sweet wildlife corridor. This is the third time I've walked this, but it's always nice when I walk it. For the last 5 minutes, I've been herding these two calves down this road corridor. Not really sure how much longer this is gonna last. Hopefully not too long for these poor things. So finally those two calves have escaped from my walking after about 10 or 15 minutes of just following them. It's a nice view. That's the ocean right there, no doubt about it. And the ocean isn't too far on that side either. I'm really starting to get to the end of this peninsula. I've seen the ocean to the south a bunch of times, although not right now. There's the ocean to the north, between those two hills. So this is really feeling like a narrowing of the peninsula. Still gonna take a while to reach my destination because the peninsula is pretty long, and I'm also gonna have to veer down to the southern coast before actually following that coastline all the way to the end. But it's kind of funny how obvious it is that I'm in a peninsula when compared to Gaspésie, where I only really felt like I was on one at the very, very end. I forgot how steep these hills can be. This one was pretty rough. I just went straight up that fence, and I'm still going straight up that fence. There's quite a lot of these as well, although most of the trail is pretty easy, follows roads or farm tracks. While the trail goes past the fence, I cannot really use the fence right now because there's this huge herd of cows in the way. Even though it's pretty early in the day, I've given myself a lot of time for this hike. So I think I'll just camp right here. Might as well. Today starts with a very steep climb through a conservation park. Not very tall hills, but the trail takes them on. Way out there, very, very far in the distance, I can barely see it on the camera, is Mount Lofty, which I actually started at the base of 2.5 days ago. It's pretty fun to see how far I've come. There's very few businesses on the Heisen Trail which actually depend on hikers, but I'm pretty sure this is one of them, Heisen's Rest. I'm not staying at this one though, partly because it's out of my budget. This sign means there's 100 k's left because it's an 1100 kilometer trail. Not actually too sure about that exact measurement. I reckon it's more like 1160, but anyway, pretty close to the end now. Just had possibly the scariest moment of this entire hike so far. There was a brown snake right between my legs and I didn't even notice it until it was between my legs. And it just scurried away. It didn't try to bite me at all, but it just ran away as fast as it could, which I'm very grateful for, because if that thing had bitten me, then it wouldn't have been a fun day. Walking down the most slippery slope on the entire Heisen Trail, in my humble opinion. The trail here is completely ungraded. It's basically just, oh, there's some steps. That's nice. I think these are actually new. But for the most part, it's just very steep, very slippery grass going down this hillside, but at least it has a nice view, and there's the ocean again in front of me. There's a bit more road walking in this section than I remembered, and by the looks of the map, it looks like it's going to be pretty much all road walking for the rest of the day. Didn't really remember that the Fleurieu Peninsula was this heavy in this stuff, but once you get to the coast, it's mostly going to be single track. It's only open on Saturday and Sunday. That's tragic. Oh well. I've been waiting for this. It's like the biggest Tyson Trail sign out there. This is Robinson Hill campsite. It's the very last free Tyson Trail campsite on the whole trail. For the next 90 or so kilometers, it just continues along the coast. And there are some very fancy government-built campsites, but there aren't any really nice volunteer-maintained ones like this anymore. So I'm gonna enjoy this, although I'm not gonna camp here because it's too early in the day and there's a lot of road walking to do. I might as well get behind me. It's much easier to see where I'm going and where I came from on this trail than it has been on almost any other trail this year. It's been very refreshing. Welcome to Newland Hill campsite. It's really just this one camping platform. There's not really too much else here. There might have been a water tank here at some point, I don't really know, but anyway, this is the only campsite in this part of the trail now. I'm going to camp here and then walk to Victor Harbor tomorrow and then continue on the Tyson Trail. So I should be to the end of the Tyson Trail the day after tomorrow, and I should be back to Victor Harbor in about 4 days. Nothing between here and Antarctica. Before I start the Wild South Coast Way, I do need to get some resupply. So I'm walking into the town of Victor Harbor. It's a 6-kilometer walk from the trail, unfortunately, so it's going to take some time. Just resupplied at a very small strip mall, which was ever so slightly closer to the trail than Main Street was. So it was a bit more expensive than it could have been, but I got a full resupply for actually a quite cheap price. I'm kind of worried that I didn't buy enough food for myself. 75 kilometers to Cape Jervis along the coast, 75 kilometers back here. I was going to sneak into McDonald's or Hungry Jack's to charge my stuff, but I figured that instead of that, I'm going to stay at one of the campsites, the fancy campsites along the Wild South Coast Way, because those have charging ports. So here is the eastern/northern trailhead of the Wild South Coast Way, which is itself a part of the Tyson Trail, although I'm not actually on the Tyson Trail. The Tyson Trail goes like down there, and I'm still up there. But it's a 70-kilometer coastal walk, 75 kilometers I think once you extend it here. Should take me about 2 days to do to Cape Jervis and then 2 days back. I've already done the whole thing 4 times. First time was with school, second time was with university. No, fourth time was actually with university. Third time was as a 24-hour challenge. I did the whole thing in 21 hours with a friend. And then the third time, I'm trying to remember, the third time would have been, oh yeah, on the Tyson Trail itself. So, done the whole thing 4 times. I'm not seeing anything new. And I'm about to do it for 5th and 6th time. So that's kind of funny. But I've never really done a trail that many times. And it is a nice trail. So it's an interesting experiment to see like how many times I can repeat something without getting bored of it, basically. Today's mission is to reach Balparetta Creek, which is about 30 kilometers down the trail. As many times as I've done the Wild South Coast Way, I've never actually done this section before. This little roadwalk section. I've always started the trail either at Kings Beach or at the far side of the bluff, which is that big thing in front of me. I've never actually started this far back, so this is my very first time walking this. It's pretty nice seeing the view of the bay and stuff. This is the car park I've always started my hike from, out on the far side of the bluff right there. So from here, everything else will be very, very, very familiar because I've done the entire thing from here at least 4 times. But it's still a really nice walk, and sometimes, you know, even your daily circuit can be nice, can be enjoyable, so I don't think I'm gonna be sick of this one. That view never gets old. There's the classic money shot back toward Victor Harbor. I've taken this photo at least 3 times, maybe 4 or 5. I've been here maybe 6 times. On top of the rock climbing cliffs right now. Really good stuff, this hiking. Really good stuff. I've done this trail so many times that now I'm allowing myself to do this the other way around the various circuits from what I usually do. So instead of continuing along the coast, I'm going to the top of this place called Ridgeway Hill. Apart from all the wildflowers, this loop hike has been a bit boring, to be honest. Not so many coastal views, but you'll see that on the other way. So this is Sand Dunes Campground. It's the first paid hike-in campsite on the entire Hyson Trail going southbound, which is telling because we're pretty close to the southern end. But yeah, here it is. Really nice, really fancy, built for the Wild South Coast Way to encourage people to hike the southern end of this trail. It unfortunately has a pretty high price tag associated with it. It's like $30 a night, which is why I am not camping here. Although there is running water and there is a USB outlet, and it's generally not a bad site. It doesn't have views like the ones in the Grampians. It's not as good as the ones in the Grampians, but it does exist and it's quite nice for what it is. I just saw Kangaroo Island in front of me out on the horizon, and I'm honestly really tempted to just catch the ferry there when I get to Cape Jervis and abandon the idea of taking this trail back to Victor Harbor and just like walking across Kangaroo Island instead. That could be so cool. I'd have to research that, and it would probably involve too much road walking. How about this? Bare feet in the sand at the beach. I'm not sure you can call this bushwalking, considering there's not very much bush around here, but I did meet some bushwalkers. A group of 3 of them just now, and a solo bushwalker before, going overnight with overnight packs. So it really seems like this trail is pretty popular, even midweek, which I'm pretty impressed about. I've just progressively seen more and more wear on the track surface, more and more people coming and going on this trail, so I think it is really getting more popular year by year, which is good. I think it deserves the popularity. So one reason why the trail has been following the coastal divide is because it's been on Crown land, and Crown land is this area that follows coastlines and rivers in some parts of Australia, and it's land that's owned by the government and leased like for a very, very long duration to private landowners and private companies. But people can enter basically whenever they want, and they can camp there, I think, for up to 3 weeks. So the trail has been following Crown land all this time, but now it's leaving it because apparently there was this one private landowner which I think bribed an official and successfully got the trail to go up into these hills instead. And it's not a huge loss because the views up there are pretty good anyway. Super steep climbs which follow fence lines are basically a trademark of the Hyson Trail. Not actually the Lavender Federation Trail. The Lavender Federation Trail doesn't actually do this. It only follows fence lines which are going on flat paddocks or on top of ridges, not this kind of stuff. But the Hyson Trail does it all the time. Told you would have some good views. The ones tomorrow are even better, so I think I'll get some drone shots then. That right there is the Bella Parota Creek campsite, and it's a weird place for me because on one hand it's the worst campsite on the entire Wild South Coast Way. I mean, look at this, it's just in the middle of farmland. And on the other hand, I have never walked past this place without camping here. except on the 24-hour walk. But even then, we spent like an hour here and watched the sunrise. So I've always stopped here, even though it's not really the best place to stop. It's just so convenient in terms of location. I thought this was a worldwide thing until I went to the States, but in Australia and New Zealand, it's very popular to develop trails which are roughly 60 to 100 kilometers in length. So not long enough to properly call a through hike or a long distance hike, but still a multi-day overnight hike. And they do it so that they can guide school groups on it, so that people can take the week off or do a long weekend and do these treks. It's very, very popular. So that's why this section in particular is so developed of the Hyson Trail. They figured they wanted a 70-kilometer section of the Hyson Trail to fully develop into this experience, and they chose this section. So this section is completely devoid of roadwalks except for the one I'm on now. This one's like 4 kilometers long, but as for the rest of the 70Ks, there are no roadwalks. It's still kind of funny camping at a place where there's a walk-in campsite in a farm right next to a road, though. This is the most infamous hill in the Hyson. It goes down, and you don't think it's going to be that steep. And then it just keeps on going down and down and down. Yeah, that's the one. Very steep, not the hardest hill in the Hyson, but definitely the most well-known and infamous. It's a bit extraordinary. So you see how all the wires in that fence are bent downward because people use them as a handrail, because that's the only way you can really retain some serious purchase in this place. Apart from holding on to that chain is brand new. I've never seen it before. I think it was installed about 2 or 3 months ago. And it's a good place to install a chain because, yeah, this descent is pretty serious. Made it. I think I'm gonna try and take some drone shots now. Kangaroos on the beach over there. Just saw them as I was having lunch. Never seen roos on this beach before, but they're still out there, still hopping along. Kind of just wondering what they're trying to find here. There's nothing for them to eat. Maybe they're just enjoying a beach walk like I am. It's pretty common here that hikers take a tumble and end up in hospital. It's just not a very obvious path, and it's not a very secure one. Although I would say, despite the danger, scenery is pretty worth it. Boat Harbor Creek, edge of Deep Creek National Park. This is definitely the shallowest I've seen this creek. There have been times in which I've had to ford this creek and it's been like a waist-deep crossing just to get on trail. The paving of this road is completely brand new. It used to be really corrugated. So you might be wondering why I'm following this road instead of the real trail. And the real trail goes inland. There are two trails through this part of Deep Creek National Park. There's an inland trail, which the Wild South Coast Way follows, which I've always done. And the coastal trail, which starts from the end of this short road, which I've never done. So I'm really keen on trying that, seeing what it's like. I've heard it's pretty hard. I've heard it's pretty good as well. This lookout and the picnic tables are completely brand new as well. They just didn't exist last time I was here. There really has been a lot of development in this park and on this trail just in the last year I've been away. This hike is awesome. So you can see the continuing path on the other side of the valley. And to get there, I need to climb down what almost looks like a sheer cliff right next to the ocean, down to this really secluded bay. This place is awesome. I should have gone here before. And it's like a minimum hour's walk to reach down some pretty serious trails. So it's pretty secluded as well. Five years ago, a lot of this coastal scrub burned off in a bushfire. So I've been watching it recover for the last 5 years, which has been pretty interesting. There's still no shade around here, although there probably never will be since there's coastal scrub. So I'm just going to enjoy the views. So, park rangers do exist. I rarely see them around here, but they do check up on this campsite in particular pretty often. I think it's because the walking campsite just down here is the most popular one on the entire trail. This is probably my least favorite development on this trail. I mean, this campsite's in a great spot, but it did replace a hut which used to be here, which was completely free and had a logbook as well. I kind of wish these places had a logbook, but it is what it is. I'm going to grab some water here and keep hiking. Between the wind, flies, sun, and 30-degree heat, this is probably the worst weather day I have ever had on the Wild South Coast Way. In all my 5 times now of hiking it. It's just the wind hasn't been great. I've constantly had to hold on to my hat to make sure it's not falling off. I've had to take it off in the middle of the sun. But I'm pretty close to the end now, around 10 Ks or so left. I'm just going to the top of Cobbler Hill to the lookout and then going down to the beach. Right in front of me is Kangaroo Island. Pretty huge island. I was considering extending my hike by heading out onto the island and walking across the entire thing, but it turns out that would have taken a bit too long. So I'm just going to go to Cape Jervis instead. That guy's not very concerned. Hey, bro. I've finally finished traversing Deep Creek National Park, which is good because I've been waiting for it all afternoon. It's just, the national park is definitely the hardest part of the Wild South Coast Way, so by extension the hardest part of the southern hiking. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but I've already done it 5 times, so I'm not sure I care so much about the scenery anymore. I just like easy hiking, like this. There's the alien spaceship house. Very familiar landmark. Tent is holding up from the wind, luckily. The sunset has this orange glow to it, this really strong magenta glow, which I'm sure isn't properly coming through. Last time I had camped at that secret beach, I was on the Hyson Trail. I had almost finished, basically just finished my very first through hike, which had taken a month and a half. I had brought a half bottle of Johnny Walker from the last town to celebrate, but then just from exhaustion and from having walked so far, I think I got very sick and I lay in bed for about 24 hours, just feeling miserable. And something somewhat similar happened here. I worked myself so hard yesterday that this morning, I just had to sit in bed for a long time and only just got up at 10 a.m. So this is the current southern terminus of the Coastline Trail. It's not really the nicest look for the trail itself, so I'm hoping the end of the trail at least gets an upgrade after this construction. And I'm kind of happy that I didn't finish this year. I'm kind of happy I finished the through hike of this trail in 2022 instead of this year, because this would have been a funny way to finish it. Turns out the terminus itself is alive and well. So I was going to walk back the way I came and walk all the way back to Victor Harbor that way, but I decided yesterday that I've just had too much of the Wild South Coast way. It's harder than I remembered. I think trails usually are harder than people remember them to be. And I want to return home and go there via an interesting and somewhat easy way. So I'm going to road walk along the coast north. I found some ways to avoid the road walk itself for the most part, although the starting section will be on the main road, unfortunately. This is such a small town that they don't actually have drinkable water on tap, so I've got some drinks instead. This right here is the main road between Adelaide and Cape Jervis, and by extension Kangaroo Island. It's a road walk. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's gonna be over once you get to the top of those hills. Up there I have some more options. I found out this place called the Talisker Mine was not too far away from my walk, so I figured why not divert here. I've always been curious about it. It's the only conservation park in the region I haven't visited, so might as well. So let's see if there's anything actually impressive here. This is one of those places where government workers or volunteers would have put some significant effort into this place and made it nice for visitors, made it interesting as a destination. But then there's just so few visitors to this part of the state, to this part of the country, that no one actually goes here. And the funny thing is, this is a pretty extensive mine site. It's more serious than most of the ones I've seen around. Like, that shaft just goes right down into the bowels of the earth. I'm really impressed by all this. Totally worth it. I just spent a long time in this forest, Second Valley Forest, and I really appreciate it. That's a pretty disappointing speed. I'm not very impressed with myself. So we just reached Second Valley, opposite side of the Fleurieu Peninsula from where I started my day. And I was going to follow the coast. I am going to follow the coast for hopefully the next 15 kilometers or so. I'll camp long before then. I'll camp somewhere on this more remote stretch of coast. But check this out. There's a lot of cliffs out there, a lot of very, very serious cliffs. Looks like some pretty harsh terrain, so I might have to think about cutting into farmland to get through. Okay, there's a really good trail here I had no idea existed, so I'm clearly not the only one crazy enough to do this. There's even signposts. Well, that was a funny minute. Thinking that I would have a lot of trouble finding a path of any kind around here. The funny thing is, it's not on any maps, this trail, and it's not on Strava either, which means no one using Strava has ever hiked here. So it's pretty undercover, but I guess considering it's Australia and it's a populated part of Australia, of course there's going to be a coastal path that the locals at least know about. It's so cool and weird to be doing this walk. Like, that's a stile over a fence. Farmers are actively accommodating for this trail, but no one knows it exists. No one knows this trail exists No one I know has talked about walking it. It's just completely undercover, completely out of the blue. I really thought it would just be doing some dodgy trespassing and stuff, but that is not the case. It's so weird. Well, my weird trail seems to have dumped me out here. I think I'm gonna try and camp in that gully once I find a way to get down there. Well, it might be a bunch of gravel, but it's good enough for me to cowboy camp on, so I think I'll do that. And tomorrow I have a bunch of beach walking, maybe 15 kilometers of it. We'll see how successful I am with that. Followed by 20 kilometers of road walking, followed by 5 kilometers of main road walking. So another 40-kilometer day, but that's gonna see me through to the edge of the city where I can take a bus home. I was hoping I'd be able to just follow the coast from this point, but with that cliff right there, it doesn't really look feasible. So I'm gonna have to sneak in on an inland route again, as I am now. Well, I got to those cliff tops, but going back down to the coast isn't gonna be too easy. I'm hoping that next divot might help. Well, that was a bit hairy, but it turns out some pure courageous stupidity was enough to get me through. And now it's just beach walking for the rest of the morning. Just left the coast. It's been a really awesome 15-20 Ks on the coast. I'm very happy I took that route. Now it's just 20 kilometers inland on roads, and then another 5 kilometers down Main South Road to finally escape the Filio Peninsula and to reach a bus stop for the city. So there's been tons of traffic, and I've really been wondering why, like a serious amount of it. And I've heard that it's because the road down there, Main South Road, that's closed. So they're diverting all the traffic out here. It would have been much better if I had just gone down Main South Road instead, walked past the accident. But oh well. After that curse, I was given a blessing. The road I'm on now is closed due to construction, so I'm completely free to walk down it. There's McLaren Vale on the edge of the Adelaide city. I've been waiting for that view. And now I need to get all the way down to that place. I've been trying my hardest to avoid this road, but I think it's going to be unavoidable for the next 5 kilometers because I need to get down to the plains of Adelaide somehow, and this is essentially the only way I can do it. So it's going to be dangerous for the next hour, but I'm going to have to do it, and I'll get to the end.